Welcome to an exhilarating journey into the heart of a winter adventure. Over the next 13 episodes, we invite you to join us as we embark on an exciting endeavor, building the ultimate winter snowmobile camper. Get ready to witness the fusion of innovation, craftsmanship, and wilderness exploration as we guide you through each step of this exhilarating process. From creating the perfect frame to crafting this custom accommodation, we'll be your trusted companions in transforming your next snowmobile trip into a cozy retreat on the snow-covered trails. Whether you're a seasoned outdoors enthusiast or a newcomer to the thrill of winter travel, our comprehensive step-by-step instructions will empower you to create your own winter wonderland on skis. Join us as we tackle challenges head-on, share expert tips and tricks, and celebrate the triumphs of each milestone reached. From insulation and heating solutions to storage optimization and interior design, no detail will be overlooked in our quest to create the ultimate snowmobile camper. So gather your tools and your sense of adventure, prepare to make memories that will last a lifetime. This winter, let's venture into the great outdoors together and discover the magic of a DIY snowmobile camper built with passion and ingenuity. Stay tuned for the ride of a lifetime. Hey guys, Scott from Realistic Outdoors. Super excited because today has finally come and I get to start my second camper build. If you haven't seen the first one, I'm going to leave a link above here and you can go check that out. Great big camper, well, great big mini camper that you can take out ice fishing, hunting, whatever you want to do. Protect you from the bears, keep you nice and warm. Check it out if you get a chance. But this build is going to be a winter camper only to be pulled behind a Ski-Doo and or a quad just for ice fishing. I have just found that over time I set my tent up and it's just, once it's set up, I don't want to move. And then I end up putting another tent out so I can move around and roam around. So what I'm hoping to do with this is have a nice, warm, heated spot to sleep, keep some of my gear, and then I can just keep my tent to pop around and we can zip anywhere on the ice and I can still have my place to sleep and my tent right beside it. So I'm going to start this build. I'd like to thank Cutter Creek Outdoors for coming on board for this build. They are an integral part of this. They're even going to show up a few times throughout the video to give me a hand. Well, hopefully if we can tee it up. But they're interested in come down and give me a hand, and hopefully I can use some help here once in a while. So that said, my shop is a mess. It's winter. It's February. I'm having I think it's a 2-degree day out, so it's a chance to open the door and get this shop clean, because when it's cold, I just start one project after another, and then this place ends up being a mess because I'm just flying 100 miles an hour, 15 feet in the air. So, spent a lot of money on this. This is a Ninja Smoke Ball. Apparently, it'll clean my shop. So I'm going to give it a go now. It's a lot of money. Hope it works. Wish me luck. Did it work? Oh, look at that. It worked. I can get started. I now have room. I'm super excited. This week, all the parts have been ordered. As they come in, get the frame started. Stay tuned and hopefully we'll get to working on the frame together, lay out the plans and get it started. Stay with me and together we can get this done. As I eagerly embarked on completing this camper project, with the hope of capturing some captivating winter footage, my excitement level was high. I envisioned cozy scenes amidst the snow-laden landscape, the camper a snug haven against its winter chilly elements. However, much to my dismay, Mother Nature had other plans. In an unexpected twist, the onset of warmth arrived with unprecedented haste, swiftly melting away the snow before my lens could even capture its winter beauty. The rapid thaw felt almost surreal. Yet despite this unforeseen turn of events, the camper project remains a testament of adaptability, reminding me to embrace the unexpected with open arms. This change will just give me more time to spend finishing the camper. Let's talk a little bit about the design. I wanted it to be monochromatic. I wanted the framing to also match the colors of the background. I wanted it to be a scene of an area that I like to fish. You can see the trees in the lake carrying on in the background, but I also wanted it to be small. It needs to be
pulled behind my Skidoo or my quad. So in this case, it's 7 feet long and it's only 4 feet tall, and the whole thing is going to weigh less than 200 pounds. I know that seems like still a bit of weight, but in this instance, it's going to be easy to pull on the snow. The frame itself, I recycled from a sign dealer who had it from an old awning, and it was 28 inches already by exactly 7 feet, which is what I needed. So all I had to do was reuse that piece and add a few angles around the outside to make it 38 inches, because in this case I wanted to make sure I had more than just a bed when I get in. I want to have a spot where I can actually put my boots, and if it's all slushy and wet outside, I'm not going to be carrying that into my bed. So there's the overall plans and the designs, and I will have these available on my YouTube channel. If anybody is interested in downloading, there'll be some measurements and all the specs and all the pieces that I did use and all the costs associated with them. Available, no charge. Okay, so this is where the fun began. So I grabbed my cutoff wheel from my angle grinder, and I took the frame piece, and I'm going to try and cut this piece out of that existing, so that I'll only be left with that 7 foot by 28 inch frame. So I just used my angle grinder, and it wasn't going as great as I had hoped, and I was soon to discover there was a better way to remove the aluminum bars that I needed, and it was not the angle grinder. So with a couple other tools in my shop, I tried a couple other things, and then I quickly realized my reciprocating saw with an aluminum or metal blade was far superior than this thing. So anyway, I dumped this thing, and right around here I've discovered a much better way. It works so much faster. So anyway, it's up to you. You can use a jigsaw, you can use a cutoff saw, or you can use a recip saw. All the methods worked. I tried them all. I just preferred this recip saw because it actually worked faster and it was bigger and easier to control. So I didn't have to worry about, you know, cutting myself or cutting my fingers like I did with that cutoff saw. So anyway, I got these pieces all cut, and once I got the frame all done and laid out, then I was able to start grinding some of the wheels or some of the cutoff marks to smooth out the aluminum and get it ready for the next stages. As I'm grinding off some of these parts, I will point out that recycling is definitely a better way to go. If you can find an old awning like I did here to recycle to start from, it's a way cheaper way to go. Now, the original plans called for me to purchase the aluminum, lay this out, and weld it right from start. Now, that's certainly an option, and it probably would have saved me probably half a day's worth of work. However, I really like recycling things and using them in my project. So it was worth the effort for me to find these items, and you'll find them everywhere. They're all over the place. So I just cleaned these cuts up and then grinded them off and got them ready. Once I had that all grinded off, I brought it up onto the table to make some measurements, do a little bit of pondering, and decide exactly how I was going to make the supports to hold the skis. And I wanted it to be a little more skookum. This aluminum is thick. It's 3.5 millimeters, and I'm sure it would have handled the weight. But for the cost of weight of adding these pieces that I'm going to add, it really wasn't that much. And just in case, you know, I don't know what kind of abuse I'm going to put this through or any future owner, so I'm going to make sure that it's super skookum. So I cut off some aluminum pieces from that same frame, and then I'm going to set them up on top of the frame itself here to kind of figure out what I want to do. I just know that I need it to be a lot more secure. Just for my, I don't know, it just makes me feel better knowing that it's way overbuilt. Let's put it that way. I like to overbuild things because I underestimate what aluminum can actually hold. So now that I have the pieces cut, I want to assemble them kind of like a Lego or Meccano set, where I can actually set them up, clamp them together, and then decide if they're going to work like that in the real world. Because sometimes from the drawing, it looks great. But once you get it in the real world, you're like, okay, this thing won't fit, or you can't get this on or off because this is in the way. So I just put them together like this, square them off, clamp it all down, and then I decide if the skis will fit, if I need it to be bigger or smaller. It just makes more sense for me to visually see it in the real world as opposed to on paper. Paper certainly gets me started, gets me some measurements, gets me costs and ideas, but this is the best way for me to visualize, actually do it.
Okay, I got it all squared up. This square piece here mounts on the bottom, so it's going to weld on like this. The whole thing will be flipped over. This is where I'll mount the plate that the ski will connect to, so the ski will sit here and be able to move this way. But I added this extra for support. I'm sure didn't need it because this aluminum is quite thick, and I'm sure it's very, very rigid. But for the extra weight, it was worth the extra support.
As I talk about a little later, welding aluminum is very precarious. It needs to be immaculately cleaned. And because this was already a structure and it was powder coated, which was nice because it has an undercoat for me, I still have to clean off all the connections and all the powder coat now that I know where I will be welding these together. So I have to make sure they're incredibly clean and all the paint removed. When I get on site, I will use a gun wash or some sort of denatured alcohol to remove any of the acids from my fingers or any of the contaminations that it's gained or oxidizations over the 12 hours from this point, of which when I take it to the shop to actually do some welding. So one word of caution, it needs to be ultimately clean before you can start welding. Full disclosure on this, attention, alert, like nobody knows. I am not a welder. I only learned this a couple days prior to this actually happening. The gentleman in the top right hand corner, Nathan, was nice enough to lend me his shop and give me some lessons on welding, and we used his very expensive welder. Now, did I learn some stuff? Absolutely. Were my welds the greatest? Not a chance. So I welded in more places than necessary, that's for sure. Some of them turned out amazing. Now the principles were quite a bit different than welding steel, where I would drag. In this case, you push forward with your pools. So it was quite a bit of change of how I would weld. But that's okay. I learned, and I also decided and discovered that you needed to make shorter passes because the aluminum would heat up way too fast and you had to let it cool down. Move to another weld area, weld something on, maybe across on the other side, and let that side you're working on cool down a bit. I did have a small amount of warpage when I welded the two main braces along the two main sides of the frame. So I ended up having to lay some weights on that and straighten it out. So definitely word of caution, you can overheat this metal pretty quickly, and some of it was ultra thin and I had to crank the voltage down very low, otherwise I was blowing through the actual walls of the tube itself. So I did learn a lot of grinding, which is a bad welder's best friend is the grinder and a flap disc, so you can hide some of those ugly welds. However, I did end up with some really great welds, and it was super, super strong. I managed to test it and put a lot of weight on it, so I'm super happy how the outcome came with this.
Clearly not a welder.
Welding aluminum with a feed gun, especially when joining thinner pieces of material, necessitates meticulous attention to several critical factors. Firstly, precise control over the heat input is paramount. Aluminum's high thermal conductivity and lower melting point compared to other metals makes it prone to warping and distortion if excessive heat is applied. Thus, maintaining a delicate balance between heat intensity and duration is essential to prevent a material from damage. Secondly, proper wire selection and feed speed are crucial. Thinner aluminum requires smaller diameters and a slower feed rate to ensure consistent deposition without overpowering the material. Additionally, shielding gas composition and flow rate play a pivotal role in shielding the weld pool from atmospheric contamination, particularly oxygen and hydrogen, which can compromise the weld quality. Lastly, meticulous preparation of the welding area, including thorough cleaning and appropriate joint design, is imperative to achieve strong, durable welds. By meticulously addressing these factors, you can effectively navigate the nuances of welding aluminum with a feed gun, ensuring precise, high-quality results even when working with thinner materials. You'll see here too that welding aluminum causes a lot of smoke. Now, this is a well-ventilated shop that has an exhaust fan right over my head. Otherwise, I think that a respirator would be in order, or wanting to weld outside. Either way, you're going to want to make sure that you have a nice, well-ventilated area before welding. One thing that came to mind is that not everybody's going to have access to a welder. You might have a friend that has one, like I do here in this case, because I don't have one myself. I have a steel welder, a spool gun, but you know, obviously I can't weld aluminum with it. I got to thinking, you could probably build this using brackets and screws and bolts. I'm pretty sure you could put this thing together with some brackets and bolting to keep everything in place, and it would work just the same. But trying to keep the weight down a little bit, so the amount of bolts and nuts needed here would probably be another pound and a half total for the amount of security that I would want to put in them. But that said, you can certainly build this without an aluminum welder. And I think it was one of these perfect welds right here that started to warp my frame, because it was so long that I started to overheat and it bent right there. Pretty sure now that I'm watching this. Okay, now that I have all these pieces welded together, I cut two pieces of 7-foot 1x2 angle and two 38-inch pieces of 1x2 angle, and I attached them on the sides of this frame and then tack welded them on to get them into place. The reason I went with the angle was A, to extend the width of the frame so that I could increase the size of my floor space, and B, the 2 inches gave me a more larger support where I'm going to lay the actual floorboard down, and I only needed it to be 1 inch high on the side to hide this side of the rail. Also, it will protect the side of the floorboard that I'm using for the sheet of plywood for the floor, so the edge of the aluminum will also protect the edge of the board for the floor. So it's a win-win. Okay, and now on the ends, I want to create something that I can use to support the trailer when it's sitting in position and I've got it where I'm going to be camping. So I cut 4 pieces 4 inches long that are 1.25 inches aluminum tubing, and I'm just welding those on here on the edge, and the actual legs themselves are 1 inch square tubing that will insert into these spots with holes pre-drilled for different position heights, and I will weld some feet on them just for stability and so that they don't sink into the snow too far or the slush or what have you. Okay, now that I have this back in my home shop, I'm going to use a flap disc. I believe it's an 80 grit, and I'm going to smooth off some of these spatter marks and some of the bad bumpy welds that just ended up with too big of a pool. Just smooth them down a little bit. I don't want to take off too much because a lot of the weld is the strength, so I don't want to remove that. I just want to smooth it out so that when I paint it up, it won't look so bad. So here's the legs here that I finished that will slide into those pockets that I welded onto the frame that you can just see kind of off screen there. So once I get these all cleaned up, I will put some primer on them and let them dry for a little while, and then I will put a coat of paint on this and the remainder of the frame that does not have any paint on it whatsoever. I want to make sure that it's all treated. I know it's aluminum and it'll last, but it still will get pitting, and I don't want any pitting in there, and I would just kind of like to keep it as pristine as possible. So I will probably paint it a flat black just to kind of, maybe hide a little bit of some of these welds that are a little bit higher than they should be. But flat black is everybody's best friend, and it'll look good around the edge of the frame. If you're looking for a pristine paint job at the end, you can always put some Bondo, and then you can sand it down, and then you can make sure that every little bump is nice and smooth and flat. If you're looking for just the absolute perfect finish, you can certainly do that. I'm going to be beating this up pretty big, so I don't really want to worry too much about some of the smaller cosmetics, so I just won't bother with this one. And we're down to the final grind off on this side where the actual angle iron attached to the frame that I enhanced for the actual leg of the skis. So once I get this done here, I am done on the frame and I will be ready to paint and move forward. Although I might save the paint to the end because the actual camper will come off the frame until I attach it solid. So I might work my way building it up and then do the painting at the very end, then reattach the camper on top of the frame, just because it'll probably get beat and scratched a little bit dragging it around the shop. And I still have to drill the holes for the ends so that I can put the tow bars in. I'm going to put a tow bar on the front, and then I'm going to put a receiver on the back, so if I want to pull my sled for extra gear behind, I can put it on the back as well. So we're just getting to the completion of this frame here, and we are going to be moving on to the body, and that is the most exciting part because this has taken quite a while and I've got a lot to show for it, and it was painstaking. However, the next part will stand up the walls and the floor itself, and it'll go so fast and it'll actually start looking like a camper quite quickly. So I'm really looking forward to that next part. Oh, hey guys, thanks for joining me for this week's episode. It was slow in getting the frame together is a little bit slow, but having the base, the perfect base, is all important. It doesn't matter what you build on top if you don't have the perfect base. I hope that you were able to learn a little bit something about the welding and maybe the design of the base for your next project. It doesn't have to be exactly the same as mine, but I hope you take some of those tips and tricks away for welding, because a little learning experience, big learning curve for me, but it was a lot of fun. Now that I got the rest coming in, the next episodes are going to happen so fast. It's going to build up. Stay tuned. You're going to be wicked excited. And I'm glad you guys hung along. Thanks for staying tuned for this long. I'm Scott from Realistic Outdoors. Let's get out there.